I want to jump to another issue that I know you're finally attuned to, and that's the issue of leading and developing and helping become successful the generations known as millennials and Gen Z. So the millennials, for this conversation, I'm labeling them as people born between 91 and 95. The young pups are the ones born between 96 and 2010. And I know you got a ton of them in your group.
Yep.
So I found an ancient quote that said, this younger generation is disrespectful. They don't respect authority. They're lazy. They're slovenly. They don't clean themselves. Blah, it's complaining. And I showed that to some clients and they thought it was my quote. And I said, yeah, any idea who said that? They said, no. I put the next slide up. It was Socrates, 2,000 years ago, complaining about the younger generation.
Wow.
And you could lift it, and with a few massages, it's a modern quote. And so I've learned long ago, when my generation went in the Marine Corps post-Vietnam, the old guys that had been in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam were still there. And they thought we weren't, man, these guys, they called us the Pepsi generation. That's what they called us. These guys are disrespectful. And you know what? We became really good Marines and we did well. And millennials, the millennials changed the military. Well, somehow they pulled off Fallujah and some of this fierce fighting and all that. So I say that the younger generations have always been picked on, scorned, dismissed, but they've always risen to the occasion if properly developed, mentored, trained, and supported. What's your thoughts on the younger folks?
Well, I think your last comment there is spot on, and I completely agree with it. I think I guess I'm Generation X, and what I feel privileged to have experienced is the time I had with my grandparents that were the greatest generation, right? So I think that is just a really fortunate point in history, to be able to have had that experience of learning from, my dad's dad was a hobo during the Great Depression, and literally was the guy who bumped around with the stick and the sack over his shoulder and hopped freight trains from New Jersey to northern Washington and Oregon, and then to have him join the Navy in San Francisco and serve in World War II in the Pacific and all of that, come back and start a family and drive a Coke truck and work side jobs so that he could have a house in a little, blue collar neighborhood in New York. And I could go on and on about my other grandfather and his experience, and then having parents that were baby boomers and were, focused on achieving and making their family, their children's life better than theirs as well, and being so respectful to their parents. So in some ways I could say I'm making it sound like the Socrates code a little bit, that, other folks, it's just, but they haven't had kind of that really unique experience that the greatest generation, at least in my view, created from a learning perspective, from a culture, from a personal development standpoint. But I do think if you can figure out ways to create that, it doesn't have to be quite as dramatic as kind of the historical reference I'm making there. They're absolutely responsive. Absolutely responsive. Being critical, it surprises me sometimes that there isn't that just absolute desire to, achieve, advance, somewhat make more money. That's a narrow view, right? I might say, oh, that's, all the people around me are like that. That's not really true. There's a lot of variety and difference, in even that kind of mindset. But you do see some of that, right? There's a much bigger desire to understand the bigger picture, and certainly the social aspects and dynamics. And I think it's just recognizing that, and then understanding, how do you address some of those needs or desires in people, and you can get them there.